In this talk, we'll concentrate on developing our rationale and background for our research topic or proposal. So over the next few minutes, we will think about how to develop the background for our research, including the importance of a literature review, identification of the knowledge gap, and a rationale and justification for conducting the research. So when we find a research topic, it's really important that we understand what is already known about the topic. We need to start with a statement of need, and in fact, in your rationale or your background, it should be your first sentence, and this clearly states why we are doing this. So, for example, if we go back to the example from the last talk, if we're thinking about people who are not being assessed after suicide, our statement of need would be, although many people present with deliberate self-harm to the emergency department, it is not clear how many of these people are formally assessed for the risk of repeat self-harm prior to discharge. So we say this is a problem, and then we can talk about what we know and what we don't know. And when we're thinking about what we know, what we need to do is review the literature. We're not going to go into any detail about systematic reviews. Suffice it to say, we need to review the literature in an organized fashion to make sure we pick up all the important research that's already been done as far as possible. And we need to critically appraise the research that has already been done. Just because research has been done, it doesn't mean that it has to be very good. This is really based on the scientific literature. Popular literature and popular culture may help us decide why something is important to the public. But what we know about the topic in this context is really about what we know from the scientific literature. And then we need to think about what we don't know and clearly state it in this section of our proposal. So what is it that we don't know about this problem that would help if we could find out? So the knowledge gap really looks at what is already known about a topic and what isn't known, and then the difference between those two and the areas that need more explanation. When we are stating our knowledge gap in the background to a study, we need to be clear and concise. So I've been using very specific words here. We talked about rationale, we talked about background, we talked about justification. When we're writing up research or writing a research proposal, the scientific community often use a format called the IMRAD format. That stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, Analysis, and Discussion. But I find that the word introduction is vague and doesn't tell us what we're trying to do in that section of our research proposal. And in fact, what we're trying to do in that section of our research proposal is to give some background to the problem that we're going to research, talk about the rationale and justification for actually doing the research. Let's explore this a little further. When we talk about rationale, we're talking about that part of the introduction that lays out the argument for doing this research and the general logic behind the research itself and the overall benefit of the research. The justification is a little bit more specific. This provides a more specific argument about why we need to do this research and why the risks outweigh the benefits. So we're looking at the pros and cons of doing the research, the cost versus benefit or the benefit versus risk. At this point in the justification, we need to emphasize the local context. We're doing it here in Trinidad because our doctors need to know, our patients would be better served, something like that. And also, but also we're going to say, but it is research, and when we do it, we think it will be of more general use to a wider reading public. So that was just a quick talk about some of the things that you need to think about when you are writing up the background to your research project. If you have any comments or questions, you can post it on the discussion board, and we will try our best to get back to you. As before, we end the talk with a little discussion about what you can do on your worksheet. So, having identified a research question and thought of your primary and secondary objectives, what we want you to do now is to think about how you develop a background for your research. At this stage, don't get too involved. You're talking about maybe 1 page or possibly 2 pages of writing, just laying out what the problem is, what is the rationale for doing this research. What's the problem, what's the knowledge gap, what's the rationale for doing the research, and what is the justification for doing it here and now in Trinidad and Tobago. Our next talk will look at research methods.